Hello and welcome to the Woodshed Sports Report. Hope you guys had a fantastic weekend. Welcome back. It's been a interesting weekend to say the least in terms of NHL games. There's a lot of preparation going on across Canada, getting ready for the World Cup. We won't talk about any of that today. We'll talk a little bit about the IIHF World Hockey, or I guess it's the Hockey World Championships, not the World Cup like I've been calling it. Talk about the Memorial Cup games that went on this weekend. And I thought my throat was going to be okay today after seeing Cavalry on the weekend. But as you can tell, my voice a little bit rough around the edges, so I'll throw a lozenge in here. And then we will break into talking about the NHL playoffs. But of course, I'm trying to get a guest on for later this week to talk about the coaching situation up in Edmonton because that's been a bit of a gong show. Because I think that's one of the more interesting stories going on in sports outside of the playoffs right now. Um, because you have a coach that's taken you to back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals, and then it's one round one exit in a year where you traded away your number one goaltender for effectively the same person. And then you're getting mad that you didn't get the results you wanted. Or at least that's how I read the Edmonton situation. But we'll talk about that later. Let's start with our playoff talk as the thing I've kind of talked about over the last few weeks about how if the Vegas Golden Knights don't get eliminated in the first round, the Calgary Flames fan base should be cheering for them to win the Stanley Cup this year. And boy, it's actually looking like that could happen. And of course, out east, it's been one of the most interesting playoff series we've seen in quite some time happening out east. But let's go to the game by game breakdown where the Colorado Avalanche on Friday tried to even things up with Vegas, but as we know now, they could not get that done. Was a 3-1 victory for the visiting Vegas Golden Knights. Again, Colorado without Cale Makar, but Vegas without Mark Stone in that one. But again, it's turning into there's just too many superstars for this Vegas lineup for a depleted back end of the Colorado Avalanche to handle. First period opening goal was Ross Colton. Assist to Brett Burns and Nazem Kadri. Of course, you like to see Brett Burns get involved. He's going to be the guy that I think the Avalanche really leaned on to lessen the blow of not having Cale Makar leading on his veteran leadership, and it just was not there. Good to see Nas playing well as a selfish Flames fan, but outside of that, it wasn't great. No scoring in the second. We went all the way to the third period where it was a trio of Vegas Knights goals. Eichel on a missed pass out of the zone, just the Vegas Golden Knights able to turn it around, and Eichel just walks in off the near boards, undefended, essentially. Assist to Dorofeev and Barbashev, and then speak of that same trio. 2 minutes later, the Avs can't exit the zone. Dorofeev stops it from leaving. Eichel with the touch pass over to Barbashev, and he roofs it. Same three guys, 2 points apiece. And for Barbashev, that wouldn't be it, as Rasmus Anderson separates man from puck in front of the net, dishes it over to Barbashev, and he finds the twine. The Golden Knights up 2-0, heading back to the desert. Then out east on the 23rd, it was game 2. Carolina takes it to overtime. Montreal just could not get any shot pressure at all in this game. The fact that it went to overtime is hugely a benefit of having Jakub Dobesh playing as well as he did. Of course, the Canadians only shot 12 times in this game. Hurricanes with only 26 of their own. But hey, that's still a big delta there between the two squads. And this was vintage Winnipeg Nick Ehlers coming to play for the Hurricanes. Eric Robinson opens the scoring. Again, just good forecheck by the Hurricanes, starting to pin this young Montreal team in their own zone. Get the cycle and get a lucky tip. But Carrier and Jankowski get the assists. Calgary Flames legend Mark Jankowski. Yeah, remember we drafted him and he's been a pretty good NHLer for a lot of his career. Then it's a turnover at the blue line for the Red Wings that allow Josh Anderson to deflect the Phil Deneau snap pass kind of thing. On goal, Gooley gets the secondary assist, and again, this is one I think that Frederick Anderson and the Canes would like to have back. Held at the line well by Gooley. Second period, again, just better transition game from the Hurricanes. That was the story of game 1, was Montreal dominating that. And it was a slick individual effort by Nikolai Ehlers, pulling it through his own legs, getting his third goal of the playoffs, assist to Jacob Slagon and Chatfield. The Habs would tie it up late or midway through the third, just kind of a scrum that eventually the puck does get through, and once again it is Josh Anderson, his 5th goal of the playoffs, assist to Carrier and Deneau. It would only take 3 minutes into overtime, where once again it's the Ehlers, Jankowski, and Chatfield line getting it done. Quick transition, Jankowski taps it forward to Ehlers, and Ehlers makes no mistake. Gets the Flames legend his 3rd assist of the playoffs, and gets Carolina back into this series using the rest versus rest argument. But hey, Montreal still heading home in a effectively what is now a 5-game series with the home ice advantage. And then finally, last night, boy, did the wheels fall off for the Colorado Avalanche. Hadn't given up a 3-goal deficit or a 3-goal lead in the last 2 seasons. They go up 3 in the first. Landeskog finally gets on the board once again. Good transition play by the Avs. Devin Toews gets it by, and Landeskog just kind of picks up the pieces, shoveling it past Carter Hart. And then again, another good transition play. Marty Nakis finds a streaking Josh Manson, drops it back to Nazem Kadri, and he wired it home. His 3rd goal of the playoffs. And then Jack Drury, the shorthanded effort, the trio of Avs goals, as that one just gets between Marner and Stone. Drury off to the races, makes no mistake. Avs up 3-0, and a lot of people thought that game was over. But they were wrong. Quick into the second on the power play after a very silly penalty to end the first period. Guess who? Mitch Marner slaps it over to Mark Stone. The captain wrists it home. Don't Don't turn your television screens off. Vegas coming back from the dead. Then William Karlsson, his first goal of the playoffs from guess who? Mitch Marner. I've said it a few times in this playoff breakdown. But Mitch Marner playing like a man possessed. Truly just showing Toronto that they were wrong to let him go. But hey, also playing with the pressure of being the hometown boy and kind of the whipping boy for those Leafs squads for a long time. Then another first goal, this time Keegan Colasar, an unheralded name, tips it in front off the shot from Coughlin. And that was a big marker because if I remember correctly, Keegan Colasar played some of his junior hockey here in Calgary. Gonna do a fact check on that. Oh no, he just tormented the Hitmen as a member of the Seattle Thunderbirds, of course, winning the WHL in his last year. Don't know why I thought he was with the Hitmen. But that drew it tied through 2. And then it was Tomas Hertl from Stone and Korsak. Again, just good job by Vegas. Quick transition, quick draw pass from Stone, and good hands from Tomas Hertl. An empty netter for Brett Howden. And the team that I thought would go to the Stanley Cup Finals is on the verge of being eliminated in the Western Conference Final. And it has, outside of that first 20 minutes of Game 3, has been all Vegas all the time. Carter Hart looking like he could be the playoff MVP. Jacob, like, I'm kind of out of words to say about how good Vegas has looked. And that hurts. Like, as I said, I do not want to put any additional shine on Carter Hart. And I don't think I'm necessarily wrong in saying that, but man, it's been a rough series. Colorado, as I said, significant trouble needing to pull that reverse sweep to make their way to the Stanley Cup Final. But that's not the only big tournament going on thus far. Of course, we talked about the teams on Friday. The Kelowna Rocket, Kitchener Rangers, Everett Silvertips, and Chicoutimi Seguin kicking it off. We've only played 3 games, of course, 1 game a day. And it started with the Kitchener Rangers of the OHL taking on the host team, Kelowna. Kelowna was not ready for the OHL Firehouse. Kitchener scored 3 goals in under 3 minutes to blow it open. Christian Kirch stopped 24 shots for an early shutout. A goal and an assist for Jack Pridham. Dylan Edwards also had a 2-point night. But Kelowna looked rusty, and you have to remember, host cities, they're kind of, if they don't make a deep run in their league's playoff, can take a lot of time off, do a lot of preparation, but it's still sometimes up to a month without hitting someone wearing a different colored jersey. But yeah, it was a big crowd, and the 3-goal burst in the second kind of killed it off. It is what it is. It's tough as a host team in these tournaments. Then the first ever Memorial Cup appearance, first ever Memorial Cup win for the Everett Silvertips as the WHL champions top the QMJHL representative. Took only 74 seconds for them to get their first Memorial Cup goal. Jesse Heslip will be the name forever etched in that history. Everett, very solid on the back end. Carter Bear Matthias Vananen scoring key goals. But Chicoutimi nearly tied it late with Maxime Massé, who is one of the players who I had highlighted last week. Made it 4-3 with under 30 seconds left, but Vananen iced the empty netter seconds later. Again, speed and forecheck showing very well for Chicoutimi. They are allowed to do that because they have some of the best defense in the tournament. But Chicoutimi didn't have a lot of time to rest on their laurels, neither did the Rocket as they faced off in Game 3 yesterday. Kelowna played much better, forcing it to overtime, but Chicoutimi, with their transition attack and very effective power play, get this one done. Lefebvre with the game winner in overtime. And it's tough to advance in this tournament in Euro 2. It hasn't been a lot of play for TJ Ginla. But it is kind of going to be an interesting run for the Memorial Cup. I have to think, based on the showing in day one, cannot wait for the Everett versus Kitchener game. Is that today? I cannot. It is today at 6 p.m. That will be a must-watch sighting if you're around. And hey, if you don't want to watch Montreal tonight, maybe if you're like me, it'll be the second screen viewing on TSN RDS. Hey, could be watching Landon DuPont, the future Flame, if things go in that general direction. And of course, last but not least of our hockey roundup here on the first period of the Woodshed Sports Report with your host, Conrad Wood. That leaves us with just the IIHF World Ice Hockey Championships. Of course, going to focus mainly on Canada and the Calgary Flames players. But let's start. We'll do a game-by-game breakdown because we haven't done this for Canada yet. Canada opened their tournament with a 5-3 victory over Sweden. This was the statement opener for a young Canadian squad. The top six forwards clicking immediately. A dangerous-looking power play. And hey, you got a young squad there. Got to learn at this level. You can't afford to take your foot off the gas with a late push coming from the veteran Swedes, including not Olli Mata. He's a Finn, Conrad. But this win established Canada as the favorite in their group. Of course, then it was time to take on I don't want to call them a bottom feeder because that's not fair to the Italians. One of the teams that's not necessarily heralded at the top division. 6-0 win for Canada. Could have been bigger, but huge puck possession advantage. Canada having the speed and size and goaltending, preserving the shutout. And also allowed for the depth in Canada to kind of get back to their level. Game 3, Canada 5, Denmark 1. This was a very efficient game from Canada, who got bounced out of last year's tournament by the Danes. Canada used an aggressive forecheck to force turnovers. Got the defense involved in the offense. And it was just a physical mismatch between Canada and the Danes. This was 16 goals in 3 games for Canada. And then came kind of the scare. And if you've watched Canada at any Olympic ice hockey tournament, you know that this seems to kind of happen to the Maple Leaf. Where they need one of these games against a team that's not necessarily viewed as tougher competition for them to get back in gear. Like, I remember this has been Latvia in the past. But for this tournament, it was Canada just squeaking over Norway 6-5 in overtime. Norway pushed Canada into a track meet and exposed a couple defensive breakdowns, but Canada just with enough firepower to escape. Mark Scheifele, the overtime hat trick winner. odd man rushes were the advantage for Norway. But hey, a win is a win is a win. I have to get into my Twitch chat here. As the lovely bots come in, seeing that we are doing a live show. Speaking of which, reminder, we are live on YouTube and twitch.tv. Links are found on the Woodshed SR on both X and Blue Sky. So I have to go into a fun little minigame now that I've deleted one of my extensions. But hey, there we go. Get rid of that trash here. And then Game 5, Canada versus Slovenia, was the most recent game. Canada bouncing back and controlling things across all three zones, outshooting Slovenia 32-14. Dylan Cousins and Emmett Finney contributing. And Jet Greaves nearly earning the shutout before a late Slovenian goal. Of course, Jet Greaves, kind of the standout of a tough season for the Columbus Blue Jackets, really earning that starter's net. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting round out to the round robin, as the final game is Canada versus Czechia. Czechia is kind of the lone marquee game left in Group B. Both deep teams offensively. Of course, the Pospisil brothers have been leading the way, but it is a better top six for the Canadians. So we'll have to see. And the other key games, Sweden looking to be second in the group, looking to try and beat Slovakia. And Group A, kind of interesting, where Sweden looks like the team to beat. And of course, Finland, always so tough in these tournaments. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Calgary Flames at this tournament. Not a ton, but of course, it has been Matt Coronado leading the way for the Americans. He's been consistently leading rushes in this tournament. Eventually, he is starting to show that wrist shot we all know he has. Looks stronger on the puck, better decision making. It's kind of eschewed some of the fears that I think a lot of this fan base has, that Matt Coronado has lost a step. I think maybe just needed a little bit more confidence, maybe needed some better line mates, but has looked very good. Cooley, not the uncontested USA starter, but has looked very good whenever he's been out there. Tracking the puck through traffic very well in his first opportunity to represent the Americans. Of course, celebrating his birthday today. Probably not happy to be away from his rabbits with that one. But he is proving to be the weird, focused goaltender we've come to know and love in Calgary. Truly proving he's not just organizational depth, proving that he is a legitimate 1B in this league. And you have to wonder if Craig Conroy views this performance and his performance this year moving Cooley from long-term backup for the Flames to potentially a piece that could be moved if the wheels fall off on this thing. Martin Pospisil has been incredibly useful for Slovakia. He's Slovakian, Conrad, not. Anyways. Yeah, I'm just in the past decade where those countries were still together. But he is chaos incarnate, physicality. Of course, that comes with the occasional penalty, but Marty Party truly being that super pest that every team in the NHL wants. And Oli Mata has been that old, reliable, steady defensive, low event, dependable on the penalty kill, not going to hurt your own team. Because boy, oh boy, Oli Mata is definitely not the flashiest player. Looked very good for Calgary in bursts, but just doing everything he can be for that Finnish team. And hey, Rob Nagier played in this city for a long time as a steady defense first defenseman. So I am not necessarily unhappy seeing similar things from the Finnish defenseman. But let's swap the topics here and talk about Cavalry FC. So I have to garner some props as they hosted their first ever Star Wars Day. I had to pick up the Grogu and the Mandalorian themed jersey. And they remain at the top of the CPL. Absolutely undefeated. Of course, they've got a couple of draws in there too. But the fact that Cavalry can continue to push and be at the top of this table is truly where Cavalry wants to be. And for those of us who watch a lot of Cavalry, there's been complaints that Toby Warshevsky, of course, Cavalry's German number 9, for those of you who don't speak soccer, that means he's the guy that's expected to score goals. Hasn't scored a ton from open play, but has been deadly from the penalty spot. He is tied with Isaiah Johnson of Halifax and Julian Altabelli of Inter Toronto FC with 4 goals to stay on top of that race for the top goal scorer. And quietly, Nathan Ingham, the off-season collection out of Atletico Ottawa, the guy who in his spare time is a sommelier at Foxtrot. Very quietly having a very solid season. Second in the league with the number of clean sheets. Of course, clean sheet meaning a shutout. Also 5th in the league in saves. But yeah, this Cavalry FC squad is sitting pretty at the top of the league. Through 7 games played, 5 wins, 2 draws. They have the best goal differential in the league at +9. Of course, they are not the only undefeated team. Inter Toronto currently sitting at 3-0-3. But hey, still gotta play one more game to be equal in games. And even if they do pull off that win, that would only take them to 15 points, trailing behind Cavalry at 17 points on the season. Of course, the only reason Cavalry able to get to the top of the league is this weekend. Forge FC, they fell first time this year to Atletico Ottawa, who just also announced that they'll be losing their coach. In fact, this Sunday, had a pair of games with a pair of clubs. One of them fired their coach, and one of them with Atletico Ottawa being owned by Atletico Madrid. They've got that multi-club level where they own a club in the CPL, own a club in Liga MX in Mexico, and of course, Atletico Madrid in Italy. They're moving their Atletico's head coach on Diego Mejia to their club in Liga MX. So he's sticking around for 3 more weeks before Liga MX returns for their next season. But hey, picking up a win over Forge in one of your last final games, even though he wasn't on the touchline because he was serving a suspension. But anyways, it's going to be kind of interesting. And then Pacific FC, who took on Cavalry this weekend, they fell 3-0 in the first game of their interim coach's game. Trying to remember what that gentleman's name is who took over. Not even listed on the CPL website. But yeah, interesting times for the Canadian Premier League. Talk about that Cavalry FC game. It was a quiet first half, but then a long ball from Nathan Ingham, the goalkeeper, getting the pseudo assist as he kicks it about 3/4 down the pitch. The goaltender Himras for Pacific was out of his box, couldn't handle it with his feet, took it off his chest and played it right onto the legs of the veteran for Cavalry, Sergio Camargo. Camargo beats him in a foot race, tucks it home. Cavalry up 1-0 in the 57th. Then a set piece would bring the tall head of Amir Didic. Didic, listed at 6'5", gets his head to his first goal for Cavalry. His first goal back with an Alberta team, obviously starting his career with the former FC Edmonton. And then, as I said, Tobias Warshevsky with a goal from open play. Doesn't happen very often this season. Has done most of his work from the penalty spot. But after ringing one off the post a few minutes earlier, settles this one in the 94th minute, the 4th minute of extra time in the second half. Gets his goal, gets Cavalry a win at home to be at the top of the table. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a longer break because I didn't know how rough my throat was. We'll have a 6.5 minute intermission here as we will be right back on the Woodshed Sports Report. Oh, I didn't let you guys get to the drop. But we head on to our second segment. Of course, it is Minor League Monday. And gonna talk about a little bit of Junior A lacrosse before talking about the WCBL. Once again, this opening weekend just about to take place this weekend. And I thought Junior A was supposed to start off this weekend, but hey, apparently I'm a few weeks late to that party. In the RMLL, the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League, your top tier of Junior A within this city. And we'll talk about one of the sadder stories coming out of Calgary and area. Of course, for those of you who don't know, we have Junior A box lacrosse in Alberta. Well, we do across the prairies. We've got a 5-team league that consists of the Winnipeg Blizzard, Saskatchewan Junior A SWAT, the Junior A Raiders, who play out of the Max Bell Center here in Calgary, the Junior A Mountaineers playing at the Stu Peppard Arena up in the north, and the Junior A Miners playing out of Edmonton, Alberta. And they are 9 games into their Junior A season already. Of course, this season spanning from May until the middle of July. And thus far in Junior A, it has been an interesting one. In terms of the standings, the Raiders undefeated, 4 wins, 8 points on the schedule. The Mounties have only played 3 games. They're at 2-1. The SWAT have played a 4-pack of games, as have the Miners. They're at matching 1-3 on the season, and the Blizzard have only played 1 game thus far, but they do have the farthest to travel to host or play away games. But they're at an 0-1 record. Has been an interesting start to the season, of course. You see a lot of these where the Raiders will go and do a big travel weekend. They headed over and took 3 out of a possible 3 out of the Kinsman Arena in Saskatchewan away from the SWAT to open their season. Of course, that was over the 15th, 16th, and 17th. Meanwhile, the Miners drove down the road and took on the Mounties the Mounties headed up to the Bill Hunter Arena in Edmonton to take on the Miners. And that was a split series up there. Of course, only the 2-day variety since you don't have as much of the distance to travel. Then it was the Blizz taking down the SWAT. So that one hasn't officially been finalized by the league, but it was an 8-5 final. And we also have a game for the Blizzard that hasn't been recorded, as they lost to the SWAT 10-8 on Saturday. And their Sunday game is registered as over but not recorded on the website, so standings are a little bit wilder than I thought they were. Then, of course, there was only the pair of games in Alberta where the Mounties take another win off the Miners, and the Raiders did as well, as the Miners did the tour of Calgary, stopping at the Peppard and the Max Bell Ken Bracco side. But both the Calgary teams taking those victories. Coming up on Wednesday, if you're wanting to go watch some Junior A lacrosse, head on down. 8 o'clock ball start. I guess puck drop doesn't really ball start. Also not a great term, but game will start at 8 p.m. at the Max Bell. It is the crosstown journey. So if you want to go and support the Raiders, the home team, they'll be in their home reds. If you want to throw on the maroon, go out and support the Mounties. Then this weekend, it is the Junior A SWAT making an Alberta road swing as they take on the Miners and the Mounties over the course of the weekend. So go check out some junior A lacrosse. I've heard nothing but good things. I have a couple of friends that work in the photo teams and the PA teams and the broadcast teams for the box lacrosse, and I hear it's quite a good product. Not quite as rowdy as the Rough House that takes over the Saddle Dome, but hey, if that's your baseline, I don't think you can go wrong. Then, of course, the Western Canadian Baseball League returns to Alberta. If you're watching in around Calgary, that likely means the Okotoks Dogs are your home team. Their 20th year in Okotoks after they relocated out of Calgary down to beautiful Seaman Stadium. I think can't remember what they used to call it. Was Foothill Stadium, which is now no longer standing. Of course, they still have the field, which is still the home of the University of Calgary Dinos. But of course, that used to be the former home of the Dogs before they got that beautiful new stadium out in Okotoks. Speaking of Seaman Stadium in Okotoks, they have added another set of seats, including their new set of corporate or group tables down the third base line. So if you want to make your way out there, first home game is on Thursday. That's open to the public. I know there's a Dogs Black game inter squad going on tomorrow that I have to be out there for. But you know, inter squad, good for the warm up, getting some of the preseason rust off of me. But that's not the only game going on this weekend. Of course, the 28th has most of the season openers for a lot of these teams. And you have to remember, early in this season, there's not going to be your full component of players that play in the NCAA because they're still playing the end of their seasons down south of the border. So it'll be a lot of local talent. Get your first glimpses of some of those guys who are competing for spots in the NCAA, in JUCO. Go give them a watch because it is still incredible baseball and you get a little bit more local flavor. But we'll go through this in order of their start times. And remember, baseball start times are weird. They never start right on the hour. 6:45 Mountain Time. It is Medicine Hat hosting Regina out in the great province of Saskatchewan. I think Medicine Hat, the border city, is, I think their stadium's still in Saskatchewan. Sylvan Lake hosts Okotoks on the 28th. Swift Current hosting Moose Jaw. Weyburn hosting Saskatoon. Lethbridge will host Brooks. And that's your slate of opening day action. But it is that quick turnaround home and home on the 29th. The Sylvan Lake Gulls will come into Okotoks. Who knows? Will they play spoiler after day one, or will the Dogs be looking to take that quick opening series, as they don't have a lot of turnaround? And then, because it was a 2-game set against the Gulls, then a 2-game set against the Bulls to open the season up at Seaman Stadium. Again, I very much do encourage you to make your way out to Okotoks. We're starting to get some of our player polls back, and there's a lot of personality already I'm seeing through the player questionnaires. And oh, hey, since I checked this morning, we even got a new response. Oh, Trey the Macwood was our most recent respondee, and for any of you that have gotten the pleasure of meeting Trey Macwood, it's one of the funnier young men you'll meet out there, and I'm just reading through some of his responses here. But if you really want the answers of what Trey Macwood is doing, what he is enjoying, we'll let you tune into the streams on Flow College this year, because you know, it's so much more fun getting out to the stadium. But it sucks to end things off for the show this week, or on Monday. Again, shorter show, unfortunately. I got a lot of things to do on this Monday, so I am trying to condense this show just a little bit. Sorry to end this with a sad note, but for those of you who haven't been aware, Calgary has Alberta has a men's league football program. And it was just announced that the Airdrie Irish will not be competing in the Alberta Football League. It's really unfortunate because this is a team that has a history, has really been a way for a lot of players to continue their football careers. But unfortunately, just not able to compete this year. I've heard they're going to try and make a return for 2077. Of course, that hurts the Alberta Football League. That league consisting of the Lethbridge Wolfpack, the Calgary Gators, Central Alberta Bucks, Cold Lake Fighter Jets, and the Peace County Cowboys. Interesting that there's not an Edmonton team in that league, but really tough for the AFL, which is just kind of that place where you want to go if you want to continue your high school junior, or hey, they even had CFL players play in this league in the past. League history dating back to 1984. It's not great. It's really tough. While the Irish haven't won any championships in the league, it's never good to have a team in a league like this fold. And I know a lot of people will ask, why do I care? Some people say, oh, it's just a beer league team folding. Why do you give a bother? And I'll say this, for a lot of guys, they still are competitive, and playing on a team like the Irish allows them to close the career on their own terms. Go play a couple years coming out of high school, coming out of where they were with their junior careers. It's tough, and I give a heartfelt shout out to all the players who are now going to either have to swallow their pride and walk over to the Gators and try and find a position, or whether this is going to force them into retirement. Like, it sucks. And I know my boy Dane Nobrega was their voice for the last few years after finishing his playing career on the O-line. But it's not an easy place to be in Alberta, trying to find the way to continue to be fiscally available and also remain in full support of the athletes. So hopefully coaching staff, players manage to find a way to find any lone bright spot from this truly shitty situation. Because there is no bright side to this. There is no winning or losing, or there is lots of losing, but no winning in this. For the league, for the players, it just sucks. And I'm sorry to end on that note, but I gotta go get ready. Therapy's important, folks, so I have to go get ready for mine. we will see you for Wildcard Wednesday, where I hope to put together a little bit of a longer show. But of course, tonight, games on tap. Of course, it is, there's more preliminary rounds in the IIHF. Roland Garros has started in the world of tennis. But of course, everyone's eyes tonight will turn to the Habs lineup. Veleno will be drawing into the Habs lineup, so there is some lineup changes. So it will be Oliver Kapanen who's out of the lineup for the Habs tonight. But Lane Hudson in the lineup for the Habitants de Montréal. So we'll have to see. Veleno has not played after taking a hit up high in Game 6 against the Sabres. So we'll have to see what goes on tonight for the Habs. Once again, my name's Conrad Wood, and thank you for tuning in to the Woodshed Sports Report.